What's going on, Mountaineer fans? Thought I'd jump back on and make a quick little bowl preview video, hopefully with some statistics and some oddball stuff that not everyone else has been covering. So, obviously we've got 11-2 Toledo coming in hot off their MAC Conference Championship victory. Appalachian State 8-4. When you really break down the schedules of both teams, no one has a big standout victory. Obviously, Toledo's got the championship game that looks really good, but they really just beat Akron about the exact same score they beat them by during the regular season. So nothing huge victory-wise there, and they didn't play anyone of note outside of conference that they beat. They did play Miami, and they did play them pretty close, but they did not come up with the victory in that one. So neither team really has a victory that they can really put a stamp on and say they had a really successful season because they beat so-and-so. So it's going to be a little interesting. App dropped some games that they shouldn't have to some opponents that weren't very good, those being UMass and Monroe. So those were both disappointing losses. I'd say Wake Forest was probably the most disappointing loss because that was up to us to win it at the end and we couldn't come through with it. It sets up for a pretty good matchup, I think. App came off at the end of the season pretty hot on a 3-game winning streak with the pretty dominant scores, not allowing any opponent to score more than 2 touchdowns. And obviously Akron dropped one bad game to Ohio. Toledo dropped one bad game to Ohio. And so, besides that one, they had a game that they probably shouldn't have won against Miami that they dropped. So, overall, the Toledo fans probably don't love the fact that it's a rematch. I love it. I think this is what makes college football great. I'd like to see 2 teams go at it again. We have rivalries with teams like Georgia Southern and hopefully Coastal Carolina soon, something kind of regionally. This one's not quite as regional as that, but to see the same team twice, I don't have any problem with it. Even though we won last year, I don't think that it's any kind of given, and I don't think just because they come in with an 11-2 record, it's a given that they're going to win this year. So I love the fact that it's a rematch, and obviously Toledo fans are upset with the fact that they're even in this bowl because of the record, and they have every right to be so. They've been doing this for a lot longer than we have as a fan base, so they're frustrated that they go to Alabama all the time and they play a Sun Belt team that's not necessarily the best one out there. And obviously we are co-champs, so we take that for what it's worth, but I think a lot of people think that Troy was probably the best team in the conference this year. There's not a whole lot of gripes I think can be made with that. We didn't get to play each other head to head, so there's really no debate as far as that goes. We don't have any clear-cut lines to draw there. For their side, Deontay Johnson is kind of like their new Kareem Hunt. He's their new go-to guy, their big standout player. He's not a running back, however, he's a wide receiver. And then obviously Logan Woodside's back, and he's just a great athlete and a great quarterback who is just really matured even more. And what's funny is his statistics throwing the ball have actually gone down this year, but that's because they've been winning by more points, so they haven't needed to throw the ball as much. So don't let that little statistic fool you there this year. The one interesting thing is that the MAC bowl teams are pretty bad historically in the bowl season. So we'll see if that changes much this year. So far, there's not a big span of games to judge it on. The Sun Belt has started off hot, but we'll see what happens this year with that. It is Toledo's 7th bowl in the last 8 years. So again, this is one of the reasons why they're a little upset about the matchups. Not so much that they're playing Appalachian State again necessarily. Some people are a little perturbed about that fact, but it's more the fact that they keep getting bowl games, but they keep getting them in the same places against teams that aren't necessarily the most exciting. And they thought after 11-2 record this year they'd play a big-time school. And they're so disappointed about not being able to pull that off. In their 2 losses for Toledo, they allowed their opponents to rush for 647 yards combined. So I think that's one of the big things that we can look at is Appalachian State is obviously a running-based team. We actually did mix it up quite a bit this year compared to years past, but at our base, we are still a running team, and we will look to establish the run game in this one. Some other oddball statistics. Our record in Alabama since 2014, which is really our last transition year of 1A, or 1AA into 1A. It's a record of 4-1 overall in the state of Alabama. And those do include bowl games against two Ohio-based teams, both Ohio and Toledo, in the past 2 years. Our points for in the state of Alabama, 176 in that time. I'm sorry, 173 in that time. We only got scored on 126 points in that time span. So a little bit of desperation there. One of those games was a little bit more lopsided with a score of 53-14 to skew those numbers just a little bit. But mostly, we played some pretty close games in the state of Alabama, so it'll be interesting to see if that trend continues this year. I also took a look at some of the bye weeks or time off in between games, because obviously when you have a bowl game, you have some time off. So yeah, how do these coaches and how do these players respond to that time off? And take advantage of film, or does it not seem to be a good thing and they come out a little lax and not great in the first half or something like that? So our record after bye weeks, including bowls from the last two seasons, from 2014, is 6-1. So that's pretty good. Now, Toledo's record after those bye weeks, and theirs is a little bit more number-wise because of the MAC having those midweek games. Anything with about 9 days off or more I considered to be kind of coming off a bye. Their record is 6-4. So they've had a couple more times when they've had these games, but again, a phenomenal record nonetheless, especially when they've got to play those midweek games on Wednesdays. And I think they had a span of 3 weeks in a row of Wednesday games in recent years. So it's kind of interesting to see that. For our 1A opponents this year, I left off teams such as Savannah State because I feel like that would skew the numbers. We scored 347 points and we allowed 256. So overall, not too bad. Toledo, against 1A competition, scored 462 points, so quite a bit more than us. But they allowed 320, which is also quite a bit more than us. So again, those statistics may kind of even themselves out as we go down this road to this game. I think to have the big game, to come out with the victory, we're going to need big games from all the usual suspects, especially on offense. Obviously, Taylor's going to have to run the ball hopefully not as much as he did last year for the victory, but he'll probably have to put up some good running numbers. We're going to need Jalen Moore to help establish that run and keep that going. That hopefully open up the field for Ike Lewis and Thomas Hannigan. We've also had a couple big games out of some other receivers, so if any of them can have a big game, obviously that's a big help. And as we've seen the last couple years, this game could certainly come down to the kicking game. So Chandler Staten has been great since he's come in to relief of Michael Rubino. We'll see if he can continue that this weekend, and hopefully he can, because it's obviously a one-and-done situation. There's only one last game to play for, so hopefully the defense can also come up big. We know Toledo likes to throw the ball, and they're good at throwing the ball, so we're going to have a big game from our defensive backfield with Clifton Duck and Tay Hayes. Hopefully come up with some more receptions. Anything quite like that New Mexico State game would be great. It's going to be a little bit more difficult than that one. But I also like to see some of these other guys go out, especially some of these seniors that are playing. Eric Boggs, Anthony Flory, who's not a senior, but also A.J. Howard, who is a senior. So I'd like to have those guys go out on a high note. This is going to be a transition year after this one, I think, with how much depth we're losing. And obviously the quarterback play with nobody really coming in with a lot of experience after that. So hopefully we can send these guys out on a high note, take another victory, keep it 3 straight, and win every bowl game we've ever been to. So with that being said, go enjoy the bowl if you're going. If not, watching it on TV, cheer loudly, and enjoy the game. Go at.